You're listening to Saturday Morning Media. And now, back to our show. Here we go.
Welcome once again to the Grantcast. My name is Grant Baciocco. It's a pleasure to have you listening, downloading, following along as I ramble incoherently for a long, long time. Hi, friends. It's great to be back here. I'm recording this on January 15th, 2025. You will not hear this until the very beginning of February. The public will not hear it. The patrons will get to hear it, but more about being a patron at the end of the episode. But I did want to start out by saying that we here in Burbank, California, this house, we are all okay after the wildfires. And even the day, the only real thing that we've had was the day that they said there were 80 to 100 mile an hour winds. They started they started late at night and they went through the next day and then kind of petered off that night. And we were very, very lucky. That's what I'm going to say. I understand that we are incredibly lucky. We did not even have power go out. And it's one of those things where you almost feel like everybody else is suffering. I should not feel good right now because I didn't suffer. And we really didn't. The lights flickered once. The little warning signal on my computer's, uninterruptible power supply beeped once and then came right back and then stopped immediately. So we were very, very lucky. Lots of people reached out. Watching the news up in Oregon, my dad has, for the past couple days, constantly been messaging me saying, how bad is the wind? How bad is the wind? And I know that there have been high wind warnings recently after this initial thing and then the fire started. We have not had any of this extra bonus high wind advisory. And so every day I have to send him a little video out the window showing him, because I don't think he believes me. I think whatever they're saying on the news is that this is a disaster area and there's just winds and fire everywhere. And we have been very, very lucky in that's not. And a lot of people have talked about how the skies are like, today was a really nice day and it's hard to go outside and realize that it is a nice day when, lots of people have lost their homes. And I've had very close personal friends. My good friend Lance Anderson, who this week that I'm recording this is getting inducted into the Podcast Hall of Fame. Long overdue. He lost his entire studio. Him and his partner Marisol, they had a studio that was kind of like an artist space and just completely gone. I think in the Eaton fire, but up in Altadena, just completely gone. When a few years ago, we filmed a show for Netflix called Irax, and Irax was shot at a house up in Altadena. And when we were up in Altadena, we kind of parked in this parking lot and then in kind of the little downtown area and then walked to where the shoot was. And I noticed, like it's kind of discovering it, there was a bunny museum. And we looked it up online, and the bunny museum is just this person's collection of anything that has a bunny on it, or stuffed bunnies, or statues of bunny, just anything bunny. And it's the bunny museum. And we kind of joke like, oh, we got to go check out this bunny museum. The bunny museum is gone. It was burned up in the fire. And I think that was not far from where Lance's place was. So it's really rough. And I'll actually, here's the other thing is like so many people need help. It's hard because it's impossible to send money to everybody. But Lance has a GoFundMe. I contributed to the GoFundMe. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And then just I wasn't even going to talk about this. My whole point of saying this was that we were okay on the fires. But why does this have to become a thing we fight about? Like, people had fires. And I just got to get off of social media because I'm not in the mood for it. And just like Lance posted the GoFundMe, and then immediately people were like, well, you shouldn't do a GoFundMe because FEMA will, FEMA will not give you money if you do a GoFundMe. And it's just like, okay, is there a constructive way to say that isn't yelling, right? Like, I understand you're trying to help, but the way this person was saying it was, oh, don't do this, because if you do this, and it's like, there's just got to be better ways to talk to people. And like, I posted a thing for Toily saying Toily would love to be involved in any sort of fundraising shows. If you have a show, if you need a comedian on there, please, let me know, because I'll be happy to, Toily will be happy to perform. And immediately people started fighting in the comments. Well, why didn't you do anything for Asheville or for the Carolinas when the hurricane was? Hey, dum-dum, I did. Toily raised money for the Carolinas. Well, how come you didn't raise money for Hawaii? I did donate money to Hawaii. I have a friend who I went to high school with who lives on the island where the fire was, and I waited for her to post a link to a place that I know would be reputable. I have. And it's just, I don't understand why it has to be a fight. Everybody has to be angry at each other, and you immediately have to pick a side. And one side is right and one side is wrong, and damn you for whatever side you. I'm sorry. I don't want to get all political about this, but that really bugged me. It's like, here I am trying to offer something nice. And so I deleted that post, and I put up a new post saying, wow, I was kind of bummed that I had to delete that post when I'm just trying to do something nice. And then like seconds after that post was posted, this person posted a big long diatribe that said, well, why should we help rebuild California when California's never helped any of the other states? And all the celebrities who are out there, they deserve to have their houses burnt down. And I'm like, for crying out loud, I am just trying to do something nice. Anyway, I didn't want to get into all this. I just wanted to say that we were very lucky. We weren't impacted by the fires other than smoke. And we do feel very, very lucky, and our hearts go out to everyone else who is dealing with this. It's hard to switch subjects from that because I get so worked up about it. Speaking about getting worked up, I had an audition recently, and I made it through the first part of the audition, and then it was me and two other people. And I'm not going to go into super details how this works, but the three of us were called back into the room. We were asked to perform a little movement thing. It was a puppetry job. And then they take you back out and they call you all together, and then they tell you who's going on. It doesn't mean you got the job. It just means you're going on. I did not move on past that thing. And that really kind of shook me. And I mean, it's all part of the thing. It's all part of the job. You audition, you get things, you don't get things, blah, 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 blah. And it's just the way it is. But that really shook me. And then I had two more auditions that I had to do a self-tape for. And for those of you that don't know, is you record your audition on your phone or on your camera or whatever, and then you email it or you upload it. And so I had two more auditions to do. And because of this being let go and not making it further into the audition process for this other thing, it really threw me off my game to do these other two auditions. And I was really dragging my feet to do these other two auditions. But today is Wednesday. Last Monday, I was like, today's the day. You got to do them. And I did them, and I turned it in, and we will see what happens. Hopefully there will be some fun jobs, some fun puppet stuff coming up in the future. Speaking of fun stuff coming up in the future, my parents, I want to talk about a project and about how I get excited about projects. And I'm not going to go into too many details because this project is still in the formation stage. But my parents moved to Oregon, and they live in a tiny town in Oregon that I used to visit for 2 weeks every summer. I've talked about all this before. And because I spent so much time there, I didn't live there, but I spent so much time there, I really like this tiny town in Oregon. And so I follow the museum that is in this tiny town in Oregon. How many times can I say that? I follow this museum on Facebook. And they posted a picture it was like an old black and white photo, but it was just a little portion of this photo. And it showed like 3 people from kind of the shoulders up. And they were like one was laughing and one was like had a shocked face. And it was a photo from like, I think the early 60s. And it said, why are these, can you guess what these people are reacting to? So people guessed and people were putting, their guesses in there. And then they posted the full picture, and the full picture was from a professional wrestling match that happened in the early 60s. And I'm a wrestling fan, so I was like, whoa, this is awesome. I go, do you have any information on who wrestled that night? And they replied back to me and they go, as a matter of fact, we do. And they posted like a newspaper article that had the results from the night before. And the museum is in the Klamath Armory building. And that's where the wrestling matches took place. And it sent me down this rabbit hole of looking up the history of wrestling in the Klamath Armory. And in this tiny little town, they had weekly wrestling matches. And it really sent me down this thing. And it got me thinking of an idea for a project to do. It will probably at least the audio of it will become a podcast. I may do some video stuff with it. But right now it's kind of in the early stages. So I don't want to say too much about it. But I got really excited. I talked to my friend Mur Lafferty today, and Mur, I was telling her, I was like, you know how it is. You get really excited and you start buying domain names. And she laughed and she said, she totally understood what I was talking about. So that's at the point I am now. It's like I bought domain names, but this is a project I'm really excited to work on and see where it goes. And I think if it's done correctly, I think the museum will like it, and they will kind of help promote it maybe. And it has, because it's about wrestling, if it's done in the right way, there are a lot of these wrestling podcasts now that kind of dive into the history of wrestling. And I truly believe that if this podcast is done in the right way, people will be interested in it who don't live in Oregon, but they're wrestling fans. And the other thing, when I was talking with Mur today, I said, so this is kind of how I'm thinking of doing it. It'll either be this concept or this concept. And this is why I love talking to Mur Lafferty. Mur Lafferty said, but how about this concept? Because you're really good at this concept. And I was like, Mur, you're supposed to help me decide, not give me a third option. So thank you to Mur. I'll have a link to Mur stuff in the show notes because Mur is awesome. I launched my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel was already launched, but I have been posting videos on my personal YouTube channel, and I would love to do a new video every single week for a whole year, so that by this time next year, I have over 52 videos of this kind of style on my channel. So the first 2 are out. The first one did okay. It got some good views. The second one didn't even break 20 views. So I'm kind of playing around with maybe changing the title, changing the thumbnail. And I have a third one already recorded, and I want to record a couple more. But anyway, I'll put a link to that in the show notes. So if you want to go check it out, you can. It's just basically right now me talking about creativity and kind of how I organize my creativity. So the first one was about my creative journal. The second one that launched the other day was about my weekly planner layout, how I lay out my weekly planner. And then the third one that'll be out by the time this drops is about how I use index cards to get things done and to write notes and use it to organize what I need to get done. So you can check those out. I'll have a link to them in the show notes for this episode. Well, finally, ladies and gentlemen, this is This podcast ballooned into. I thought this podcast was going to be just maybe 10 minutes, and it has ballooned now to well over that. The final thing I wanted to talk about, and this is where you're going to go, you are crazy, is I want to talk about the concept of a future you. So I'm going to be talking about a future me, but the concept of a future you. And this is just kind of a little goofy thing that I do. And I've done it for, I don't know when I started doing this, but here's how it works. Here's basically my concept of you. You are somewhere. You are maybe by yourself, maybe you're with somebody else, and you see an older person who maybe has the same characteristics as you, maybe the same body type, maybe the same kind of clothing or something. Not exactly, you're not matching, but you just see somebody and they're an older person and you think to yourself, is that me in the future? Is that me in the future? And I'm doing the same things I'm doing now. Let me tell you how this started. Actually, the idea of this was when I was in college in the theater department at Cal State Long Beach. I don't want to get too into this, but there was details into this. But there was a gentleman who was, I was in college and we thought he was older, but he was an older gentleman. He had white hair and a white mustache. So he was of the age, I guess, whenever your hair might turn white. He was older. Now, Steve Martin, his hair turned white early. So this guy, but he was an older gentleman. And he rode a bike everywhere. And he would always we'd see him riding his bike around campus. And he would be in the theater department and he would take classes, but I never had any classes with him. And I just never kind of talked to him because we were never sort of in the same space. We would always just see each other. And other people kind of didn't talk to this guy. Not in a mean way or not in a rude way. It's just that he was busy doing his college stuff and everybody else was doing their college stuff. And so it's not somebody who nobody kind of really knew his name and they always just saw him. They knew he was a student. He was going here. And Tim Petrocchi, I remember this guy in college, said, "Grant, I think that's you from the future." And I was like, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, because you don't talk to him. He doesn't talk to you because he can't talk to you because he's from the future." And then the other thing was he was missing the same tooth I was missing. Now I have an implant now, but back then I had not one of my front teeth, but one of the side teeth off the front. I was missing a tooth and he was missing the same tooth. So Tim just thought it was hilarious. Like when this guy would ride by on his bike, there's you, don't wave because you'll create a time paradox. So that was kind of the first time where you've seen somebody, I saw somebody and I was like, is that me from the future? And then one time, my wife and I kind of have this thing we do where every Saturday around noon, we go out and get lunch. And we will usually go to this pizza place that's nearby. And one time we were driving over to the pizza place and they opened at like 11:30 and we were getting there at 11:30. And the parking lot was empty except for one car, which was parked right up at the front. And then we parked in the parking lot, not near that car. We get out of the car because it is now after 11:30 or whenever they were supposed to open. And as soon as we get out of the car, this guy gets out of his car. He's all by himself and runs to the door of the pizza place before we can get there and then opens the door and goes in before we can go in. And I jokingly said, "Oh, that's me from the future," because it was an older guy, kind of same body shape, same kind of hairstyle that I had. And I just said, "That's me from the future." And I'm trying to get into the pizza place before, I get in there because he's got to do something to fix something or whatever. And then most recently I was, these are all food places. I was at another hamburger place called Fat Burger we have out here. And well, I guess it's a chain. It could be everywhere, not just out here. And I ordered a burger and I sat down and ate it. And then about 10 minutes later, this guy came in and he sat down at a table all by himself. And I don't know, we were kind of wearing the same clothes. And I was like, that's me from the future looking at me in the past. So do you have a concept? Do you do this like when you're out, or is it just me? Am I the only insane person who goes around going, yep, that's me from the future? I would love to know. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Grantcast. Thank you so much for hanging in. This was a wild ride. I have some topics for some future episodes too, so we're gonna keep that content train going. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being here. Big shout out to all of our Patreon patrons, and I will talk to you next time right here on the Grantcast. This episode of the Grantcast was edited by Stephen Staver and was made possible by the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who've gone to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up a pledge for as little as $1 a month. Patrons at the behind-the-scenes level and above get access to a video of the recording of these podcast episodes. Big shout out to all of our patrons, and a special shout out to our patron producers, Eve Cunning, Kathy Crawford, Tony Urbano, Brandy, David Akers, Paul, Scott Armstrong, Vicky Sebring, Ricky Chavez, Karina, Jeff Toro, and Lee Thompson. If you'd like to become a patron and receive episodes of the Grantcast before they are released, visit patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up your monthly pledge today. And thank you for your support. This episode of the Grantcast is copyright 2025 Saturday Morning Media, Grant Baciocco, executive producer, all rights reserved. www.saturdaymorningmedia.com.
You've been listening to Saturday Morning Media. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.